worksheet 49. A little bit of a review here. Ablative absolutes, obviously we've been working on for a while. Relative clauses are kind of new. Yeah, it's been crazy. Everybody's busy. So each one of these 5 sentences is guaranteed to have an ablative absolute because there is a line for it. So we should be on the lookout for it. They're also going to have relative clauses as well. So first thing we want to look for is the ablative absolute. Typically comes at the beginning of the sentence, at least 2 words, all ablatives, right? So we've got here oculis, my first word is ablative, and apertis, my second word is ablative, right? So that's a pretty good indication. Defesus is nominative, miles is nominative, volnera is accusative, that's a neuter word, so accusative plural. Crura is ablative, videire is an infinitive, and then poterat, third singular imperfect, right? So first thing I want to do is kind of get the ablative absolute sort of broken off so that, oops, let's do it this way. There we go. So my ablative absolute here is oculis to apertis. Excellent. The first line, we're going to translate the ablative absolute just with the basic translation of with, right? So, with, oculis are eyes. So, the sentence is about a soldier, so we'll say his. With his eyes, and then we translate apertis. Apertis, perfect passive. So, with his eyes, sounds good, Chaz. Good to see you. With his eyes having been opened, right? That would be the kind of clunky stock translation. So now our main clause, right? Defesus miles, adjective here means tired. So the tired soldier. After my subject, I want to translate my verb. So I've got poterat. The tired soldier was able to, there's usually an infinitive close by, was able to see. The volnera, the wounds, oops, typo, was able to see the wounds in crura. Your crus is your leg. So he was able to see the wounds on his leg. The last thing that the directions tell me to do is to change the word with to something better. So instead of with his eyes having been opened, the tired soldier was able to see the wounds on his leg. I would say probably after his eyes. We could say after his eyes were opened, after his eyes had been opened, something like that. You could also think of this as just an adjective and say, with his eyes open. That would also work. With his eyes open, the soldier was able to see the wounds on his leg. Any of those work for me. Second sentence here, we've got, text is a little wonky. Let's make that 10. His is ablative, rebus is ablative, confectis is ablative, and then Hercules is my subject. So here's my ablative absolute. His rebus confectis. Translation, we start with the word with. With his. His is a form of hikaikai, so with these in the plural. With these res, with these things. Confectis. Anything with fect or fact in Latin means to do. Right? So with these things having been done. Because it's perfect passive. Hercules, qui. So now we're starting one of our new clauses, a relative clause. We need a verb. We've got superari, which is verby, but it's not verby enough. It's potuit that's going to finish off this clause. Hercules qui superari non potuit. Third singular, perfect tense. Novum laborem is in the accusative, and then my verb here is suscepit. Third singular, perfect tense. With these things having been done, my main clause here, Hercules qui. So since we're talking about a person, we're going to say who, especially since it's nominative. We're definitely going to say who and not whom. Superare, superari non potuit. Non potuit from possum, who was not able. Superare means to defeat someone. Superari, as we're going to talk about when we get to the synopsis, that's the passive version. So it's not Hercules who was not able to conquer, who was not able to defeat. It's Hercules who was not able to be defeated. So that's a passive infinitive. Hercules, who was not able to be defeated, who could not be defeated is another way you could say that. Suscepit took on a novum laborem, a new task, a new labor. Last thing, with these things having been done, Hercules took on a new task. It's fine. It's okay. We can leave it. I would probably change this to after these things had been done, meaning his previous tasks. Oh, it is so hot today. It was 92 degrees for softball practice. Fortunately, no one passed out, myself included. All right, number 3. Yeah, it was bad. Hey, Jeff. We back. Let's change this to 10-point font. Here we go. Magistro in the ablative case. Circum, the preposition around. And then it takes the accusative, so that's spatium, around the space. That's what spatium means. And then we've got ambulante, fan favorite there. One of our participles that we know and love. So from one ablative to the next, this is our ablative absolute. We start with the word with, magistro, with the teacher. Ambulante. It's very true. Although now with the kids in the building, I can actually be magister ambulans circum spatium, which is really nice just to kind of get in with the small groups that are working on stuff. If there's one thing that I hope comes out of all of this, it's that all those people who used to say, oh, online school, why do they have to be in a building? Just put them on a computer. No. We tried that. It doesn't work. So with the teacher ambulante walking, somehow it knows around. Interesting. Around the... It wants me to say classroom. A spatium is just a space. So why not? Why not the classroom? With the teacher walking around the space. The discipuli, they're my subject. Suam scientiam, that is the accusative. And then my big old verb here, demonstraverunt. Third plural perfect tense. So we translate our main clause. The students demonstraverunt, thank you, demonstrated their knowledge. Last thing, with the teacher walking around the classroom, the students demonstrated their knowledge. Yeah. I kind of like, I mean, you could think of like since or because. As the teacher was walking around, that sounds great to me. I would do while the teacher was walking around the classroom. The students demonstrated their knowledge. As works great. Sometimes. Only occasionally. Number 4. We get to go on a little tangent here about liquamine. The nominative for that is liquamen. So we'll have some fun stuff to say about that. Liquamine a, so we're going to have an ablative. A sua sorora essa. So we got a big old ablative absolute here. We got an ablative absolute with another ablative inside of it. Ablatives for days. And let's just see if I were to Google liquamen. Yeah. What it is. So liquamen, garum is a very similar name for it, or substance. Liquamen is fish sauce, which sounds weird, but number one, Romans absolutely adored it. It had a lot of salt in it. It was basically their go-to condiment for flavoring stuff. Salt is always flavorful. Fish, the Romans had a heavy diet of seafood, so they enjoyed the taste of fish. It was also something that was made from a lot of the leftover fish parts. So it was good to use that stuff up in a different way, waste not, want not. So it is a very, it's a staple flavor in Roman cuisine. There are lots of parts of the world, particularly Southeast Asia, that also uses fish sauce. So if you've ever eaten Vietnamese food, there's a good chance that you've eaten fish sauce. So it kind of sounds worse than it is, but it's just kind of really salty and has a really deep flavor. Garum was a toss-up. Nice. There you go. So, back to it. With the fish sauce, esso, which is the fourth principal part of edo, which means to eat, with the fish sauce having been eaten by sua sorora. So by somebody's sister. And that sua means whoever the subject is. So we're talking about a brother, so we'll say eaten by his sister. Oops. With the fish sauce having been eaten by his sister, we'll make this make sense, don't worry. Calidus frater, so he's my subject. The tricky brother, the trickster brother. Qui, so we've got a relative clause. Qui eam delucerat, so I need my verb. And then I have my verb on the outside too. So remember, with relative clauses, you're going to have a clause on the inside, you're going to have, you're going to have a verb on the inside, you're going to have a verb on the outside too. So we have minimum 2 verbs. So we've got delucerat, and then we have redebat, my 2 verbs. So the tricky brother, that's what Calidus means, the cunning brother. Tricky brother. Qui, who. Delucerat. The first principal part is deludo. Ludo and loose are from the same. So to delucerat is to delude somebody. That's a fancy English way of saying trick. So I'm going to say, instead of the tricky brother who tricked her, I'm going to say the, what can we say? The cunning brother. We don't really use the word cunning. Let's go Wiktionary. We'll do this on the fly because my brain is kind of broken from being outside. Let's say Calidus. Crafty. Oh, I love crafty. Let's go crafty. The crafty brother who had deceived her, tricked her. Magnopera redebat. Magnus, anything with Magnus is great. So here it's acting like an adverb. Greatly laughed. Now, in English, you never say greatly laugh at something. So the crafty brother who had tricked her laughed a lot, would be how we would say that in English. So, in my mind, this is one of those classic, like, poured a bunch of fish sauce into her drink or something like that. That was the story that I made up in my own brain when I wrote this sentence. So, with the fish sauce having been eaten, maybe after the fish sauce had been eaten, since the fish sauce had been eaten. You could go a couple ways with this one. The tricky bro laughed a lot. That's my headcanon as to what happened. And the last sentence here has one of my favorite consumed. I like that. After the fish sauce had been consumed by his sister. Yeah, I don't know. I imagine it. I don't know. It must have been thin. Had been. Yeah, why not? Let's go with that. We're going with it. Consumed by his sister. Since it's kind of liquidy, we wouldn't really eat it. Deo Volenta, one of my favorite ablative absolutes, because it basically came into English unchanged. Whoops, too big. I guess that's all that fits. Deo Volenta. No. There we go. Deo Volenta. The verb volo means to will or to want something to happen. So Deo Volente literally means with God willing. And people in English to this day, particularly folks of the older persuasion, will often say, oh yeah, I'll be there, God willing. Right? And it's just this idea of, it's like saying, if the fates allow. Yeah, God willing, I'll see you next year. Hope to, shouldn't be any reason not to, but, you know, I leave it up to whoever's upstairs. With God willing, wos, now when I see wos, it means y'all, but I got to think whether it's the subject or the direct object. And since my verb here is we de bo, I'm the subject, which means y'all are the direct object. Vos omnes cras we de bo. First, singular, and future. A little bowie boo action for you. So with God willing, I will see you all cras tomorrow. Said, but de Florida, de skater, that means to leave. And then we have nolo, which is the opposite of volo. So volo means to want to do something. Nolo means to not want to do something. I will see you all tomorrow, but I don't want to leave Florida. I wrote this sentence and published this worksheet on Sunday. And it was very true to form as well. And God willing, the gods willed it. I saw you guys. All right. Last couple things are just some boxy stuff, just to keep those skills going. So we got participles back in the ablative this time, since we're looking back at ablative absolutes. So wendo, wendera, to sell. Think vending machine. Form and translate. So we're going to put the Latin and the English. So we've got wendo becomes wendanes, but I want it to be ablative, plural, and feminine. So wendentibus. Wendanes would be singular, wendentis, and then we get wendentibus would be my ablative plural. And that means selling. And not in the newfangled kid parlance of selling someone or selling. To actually offer goods and services in exchange for currency of some kind. For the fourth PP, I guess that's a long E there. Wendentibus. Venditis, fourth principal part. Sold. We've got vendituris, about to sell. Vendituris, about to sell. And this one's tricky because you've already got an ND in the stem. That's why I picked this verb. Wendendis. Things that must be sold. Wendendis. Wendendis, I guess. Probably zoom in a little bit more on these. There we go. For the verb sentio, so ablative neuter and plural this time. So sentio, because of that IO, it's going to be sentient. And then I put my ending. Sentientibus. Anything that's sentient is able to feel. So sentientibus, feeling. Sensus is my fourth PP, so sensis, things that have been felt. Sensuris are people who are about to feel something. And then back to the original stem, sentientis, things that must be felt. Oh, it's even hot in here. Crazy. My Florida tan. Whoa, that is blindingly white on screen. Oh, man. That's worse than I thought. Oh, my God. Oh, no. Oh, no. All right. Pretend I didn't do that. Yikes. Last thing, the verb synopsis. All right, so divido. So we've got a third conjugation, divido, dividere. So we've got first plural masculine. Those are all long. Dividimus. So that's we divide. And dividimur, we are divided. We are being divided. Dividebamus, we were dividing. Dividebamur. That's really funny. I didn't think it was that bad, but I guess it is. Today didn't help. Today was brutal. And since this is third conjugation verb, we cannot use Bobby Boo, so instead we use the E. Dividemus and dividemur. There we go. So third conjugation, we have an I in a present. I in the present. We have an E in the future. Mr. Kirpin! Solway. We're just finishing up and remarking on my farmer's tan. Perfect active. So we use third principal part, which is divisi. So divis imus, diviseramus, and diviserimus. Is that third principal part? Duido, duiterate? Is it divisi or duidi? Oh no. Oh, Bartoloma. Oh, that's Italian. Yeah, it's divisi. Okay, I had a moment of panic. Like, what am I doing? And then finally, divisus. We're going to make that plural and masculine. So, divisi sumus, divisi eramus, divisi erimus. And again, if you're of the color coding persuasion, if that helps you to remember, these guys are all based on the first and second principal part. These guys are based on the third principal part. And these guys on the fourth principal part. Just in case that helps you. Imperatives, we just chop off the RE, so we get divide, which kind of looks just like the word divide. The plural, be careful, dividite. It's ITE for third conjugation. My participles, Okay, these are plural and masculine, so dividendes for present active. Those are people who are dividing stuff. Nobody there, nobody there. Divisi, things that have been divided. Divisuri, people who are about to divide something. And then for the math people in the room, dividendi, things that must be divided. Those are your dividends, both in a math equation and also eventually you guys will probably have some stock options or things like that in the real adult world. Every year you might get a little check called a dividend. Basically, it's a big chunk of profits that get doled out to everybody who's a shareholder. Those are always pretty sweet. Nothing like free money. And last two boxes here are the infinitives. So we have dividere. Oops. That's just the second principal part, to divide. This one is tricky because the short ERE, we drop the whole thing and we just replace it with an I. So dividere, which is to divide. This passive version is to be divided. So watch out for the third conjugation. Always watch out for third conjugation. It does funky stuff. I'm going to cut the video here so it stays under 30 minutes. I'll pop over to Discord if anybody's around and wants to chat or ask any questions. All right, guys. Stay cool. See you later.